Just completed the first of a couple of roughing passes on the top of the table here. You can see making a lot of chips here, and the reason that I'm doing this surface here is just going to rough it two ways, 90 degrees to one another, and then that just gets rid of anything that was high, anything sticking up, just an overall general finish that I can then start looking at with bluing. This back T slot here is important that it's parallel to the guiding way. That's one thing you have to watch. And then the back side obviously is just needs to be touched up and make sure it's perpendicular to this surface. And then I'll start to use this surface in the upside down position to start looking at and verifying the sliding ways that contact the saddle. So with a couple of rough passes on the top of the table, I've got it sitting with the top down on top of the surface plate, and I've just been mapping out what it looks like. I had preliminary measured the thickness of the table at the two ends and in the center. At this end down here it was 2" 7/11. The far end was 2" 7/12. In the middle it was 2" 7/08. So there was about, it looked like there was about 4 thou a dip, and then I got similar within about a thou side to side on the table. But as I use the indicator here, this is just a thou indicator because the tenths would be too fine for this, but as I use this indicator here relative to a known surface, what I'm finding is as well as there being wear in the middle, so along with the roughly 4 thou of wear in the middle, there's also end to end, there's about 3 thou difference, this far end being higher. So when I go to scrape the table top, I've got to get rid of this 3 thou to bring the ways of the table 0, 0 on either end with the -4, which would be expected. That would be the wear point. That would be the wear from the saddle in the middle there. But this was kind of unexpected for me, which is at 3 thou at this end. So I've got to drop this end of the table through scraping the top of the table, which is going to work out anyways. I'd wanted to scrape the top of the table. It's pretty banged up. There's a bunch of holes. There's a lot of marks in it. And even if I were to decide to go and have somebody machine this, I don't know if I will for that 4 thou, but I wouldn't want them machining off of the taper that's in the top of the table. I want to take as little off of this surface here as I can, which is the 4 thou basically, because I want to keep the dovetail geometry as close as I can, because these two have to be relative to one another. So the next step is I got to pick up a larger quantity of bluing. I've just been using the small small bottle here for all the work I've done, and it's getting down, and got to put a fair amount of bluing on the big surface plate here to do the table, so that'll be the next step. So this is the first spotting of the tabletop, and one of the things that Connolly Machine Tool Reconditioning book talks about is when you do your initial spotting on something like this, lots of bluing is okay, just to make sure you have a good, it's almost like a protectant for the surface plate, in this case the cast iron surface plate, which is a little more forgiving or easier to take care of than a granite, right? Because you can re-scrape. But it's telling me a couple of things. Obviously the T-slots are rounded. You can see over here, this is you know, got lots of bluing in the center here, and the edges are not bluing up, which is had to take care of that. That was a noisy light. So you can see that the T-slots are kind of rounded in, which is to be expected. This side here, is the high side, and there's actually no spotting beyond the coolant trough here. So that's also lining up with my measurements. Down at the other end, there is a little bit of spotting, which is kind of the low spot. Through the center here, it's really light on this side here anyways, which is the back side of the table. And then, like I say, up here at this end we have no spotting whatsoever here, which is what I was seeing on the indicator as well. So I think what I'm going to do is take probably half or 2/3 of the table and try and take this side down to bring this end of the table in. Bringing the tabletop in now for the second spotting. I don't want to move it too much, just enough to get the bluing on it. Gone through a few cycles here. I was trying to get a bit of a tip in here. There was about I can't remember now whether it's 1 thou or 2 thou tip in the ways with the table on the surface plate. So I've gone through and I scraped one cycle here. Second cycle was both these. Third cycle was all three of these, and now the fourth cycle is the whole thing again. And then I'll probably do one more, and then I'll clean off the surface plate, clean the bluing off the surface plate, get it back upside down, and inspect it again and see how we're making out. The tabletop was, you know, obviously very damaged. There's a lot of dings and a lot of abuse. So straightening it out on this surface is fine with me. I'm doing quite a bit of scraping, but I'm hoping that as I arrive at a flat tabletop parallel to the existing ways, which will then translate to a minimum amount having to come off the ways, I'm hoping that as that all comes together, this table surface, you know, except for craters from drills, but other than that, will be a nice flat consistent surface. So that's what we're working on now. And just for practice and finish and accuracy, I've gone back to hand scraping. That last cycle brought in quite a bit. So we'll do one more pass here in the opposite direction, 90 degrees to the last one, and then we'll clean everything up, clean the plate up, and get it back up for inspection. So I've got the table back on the surface plate, and not sure whether it shows up, but yeah, it does kind of there, I think. The original, I'm not sure whether this is original or not, but the way I got it, the bottom of the table, the ways here appear to be just milled, and I believe that is one of the ways Bridgeport shipped them. Both sides, I mean, everything's just milled, and in the center you can see where the wear has smoothed it out, but in general it looks like it was just a milled surface. So what I'm doing is just using a gauge block, or a 123 block here, just as a flat surface to measure with, just to get rid of any surface issues. And so right now I'm going to check side to side, because that's the latest thing that I've been working on to get the, there's a little bit of tip in the table. We've got this side zeroed here. Looks like still a couple of thou there. Maybe one right up here at the corner. So I'm going to check that in a couple of spots the same way down along through, see what it looks like. It's getting pretty flat. This is a 1-2-3 block, and it'll run over top of the T-slots no problem, and it'll even slide along the top there. We got a pretty good flat surface going, and actually not too bad as far as a bearing surface either. So I'm gonna keep going here till we can get this whole thing cleaned, and the only thing that'll be left will be the real deep marks in the holes. So